Hello.
G'day.
What up? How's things?
What up?
I feel like I start these podcasts a little awkwardly, but
It always is awkward to start because it's. I don't know.
we could do it.
Once you ride, it's like riding a bike. You sort of do that weird thing when you're trying to get going on a bike.
Yeah.
And then you go and you're right.
I could do it professionally, but what's the fun in that?
Yeah, that's true. What's professionally? Good evening. The time is da. You're with Wayne. And
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're joined by Mostly Dad. I'm Mostly Noob. Today we're going to be having the discussion of ideologies.
Ooh, that's very posh.
I know it's
It's very posh.
but
Yeah.
that's professional and stuff.
It is professional. It is. Yeah. So,
This is your idea.
well, it was because we talked about talking about America, for example, and
True.
that's a fairly sort of it's a bit insular. I mean, America, I don't know. It feels weird talking. It's like talking about your cousin or something. It's like gossiping about someone else.
I understand that, but I think we're at the point where you have to have that discussion.
I think it's also important. So I think because it's interesting as an outsider, as Australians,
Yeah.
living in a culture like this. So when I was living in Abu Dhabi, I lived with a lot of different cultures, and it was interesting to look at America through the eyes of Americans or the eyes of Europeans and things like that. So I suddenly realised that, especially in the early days, on the last days of the Obama administration, and I thought, everyone I think in Australia thought Barack Obama was what a cool dude, what a great guy.
Oh, you have your pockets of
Yeah, but
people who listen to Fox.
yeah, but generally, you wouldn't have thought that the Republican Party, or certainly Trump coming through the Republican Party, would have even been on the radar. Like I just thought it was a joke. So that just shows you what you don't know. And
It is a joke, to be honest.
But Trump or the vote or.
Well, yeah, Trump is a joke.
Well, it would be a joke if it wasn't so powerful. It's not a joke.
Fair point. It's
now,
dangerous.
It's now dangerous. And
Yeah.
we've seen that already how dangerous it is. That you get somebody like that into a position who is, they're in a position of power, and they're fairly vindictive and childish, and
Yeah.
they're not somebody who has
Skill in the field.
well, certainly not skill in the field
Skill
of
in
politics,
general.
or he's very, I think, focused on his own gains, and
Yeah.
and it's interesting then. So it's
Which he's allowed to do, to be honest.
we
But-
are.
When you're in that type of position, you have to go, you know what, I can't.
You generally, in most politicians, including the ones, even whether you like them or not, most politicians go into it knowing they represent people. They're not the office, like they're representative of the office. And even in Australia and other countries, most people recognise the fact that I'm not. But the era of Trumpism, it's about personality, cult of personality, which
Yeah.
I guess brings us to idealism.
Yes.
So,
So getting into ideology, what is ideology?
well, I guess if you break it down, it's the study of it's the study of a belief, or the indulgence or utilization of a pattern or group of beliefs. So if you are thinking of a lot, so in modern times, it's easier to think about. I was going to go back to ancient Greece, but if we think about modern era, we often have people who get stuck in certain religious ideologies, but more so probably political and right or left wing ideologies.
Yeah, which is going back to the whole America topic, where I think America's really just... I don't know... Well, I'm sure if I'm willing to go into the effort, I could figure it out. I'm sure people have figured it out, why America is the way it is today, being so divisive around that, it's left versus right. type of thing.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird because it's here too. Like not to the same extent.
Not to the
but
same
we
extent.
We very much have conservative and progressive points of view, and most people, a lot of people, not all, but some people, especially say let's lose right wing people will be very ideologically aligned against same-sex marriage and abortions. Not all. I'm just saying on the other end of it, that sort of conservative ideals, and on the other end, you've got people who are quite as bad on the in the left-wing side. So you've got these two ends of it, and we've got to sort of, I think, have this meet in the middle. But sorry, go on.
No, you go on.
But
meet in the middle.
Yeah. So it's the problem. I think is that people who indulge or don't recognise
go to the extremes.
Yeah, don't recognise that they all they do is have a feedback loop of this is what I believe. Now I've done that and I've been in that. I've been in that
type of place before. And it's almost impossible to recognise when you're in it.
It is. It is really hard to recognise, and you think the rest of the world is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah,
anyone that doesn't.
That's the whole purpose of it, though, isn't it?
Anyone that doesn't have your view is wrong, and that's really difficult to stop and go, hang on,
It really depends on the person too, because it has to be someone who's willing to admit that they are wrong, and a lot of people are really afraid of that.
Most people won't, and it's very rare that even when you recognise, and I try hard to, but it's hard to do. Don't like
it. Is hard.
Or to change. I think it's hard to change. Like, so if you have a core belief, so it's a difficult thing when you think about. Let's use. So in America, there's big talk about abortion and illegal abortions.
Yeah.
And in Australia, just recently, we've had now access to a new medication. So often conservative beliefs follow that line that this is not right, and then we have this discussion about where women's rights come into it. Women have a right to their own. It's a difficult understanding, but women have a right to decide what happens with their body.
Yeah.
But then who fights or who has the right to decide for someone who hasn't been born yet? Like, at what point do we go, there's an unborn person that needs protecting?
Yeah.
And often that comes into to people with religious beliefs as well.
It does, yeah, that one.
And I think the ideologies develop from that, and you end up with quite nasty. When people take those bits to the ends, you end up with people blowing up abortion clinics in America and protesting and doing terrible things to each other. Terrible things.
I think I think it might be helpful if we clarify what does left and right mean in political alignment. Do you have a description?
I guess it's one of those things that's just purely for a mental state to create an ideology. So the left wing or progressive politics or ideas tend to be more aligned along the lines of currently forward-thinking environmentalism. More of what used to be a communist ideal. People
better for others type of.
Well, it was more. So the communists sort of not manifesto. So a basic when we talk at communism, but not proper Marxist communist. You're looking at sharing for all people or an even playing field. Everyone shares in what goes on.
Yeah.
Which was sort of what Marx talked about. Whereas your right wing is more of or you more conservatives are more about developing and building infrastructure that we can live in and function with. So that's sort of the two extremes. So you've got one group that believes. So in Australia, for example, the conservative parties tend to be more in line with
real estate.
Well, no, but not being overly being thrifty, like being careful with how they spend their money generally.
Yeah.
Investing in small businesses, investing in business structures, investing in private enterprises. So, conservative governments in Australia are renowned for selling off, in their infrastructure. So, the railways, for example, would be then sold under private enterprise, whereas the more progressive people tend to be government control. Government like to control more of the infrastructure instead of private industry controlling infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot more to it. But I'm just chucking that.
I was going to say this too. Like everything we say is all like we say. Oh, it's like this, Being on the left is like this, but at the end of the day, like we can't.
It's an idea. I might be wrong.
Well,
my perception.
We almost definitely are wrong in some regard. It's more the fact that because we are talking about why people do certain things, we can't have an answer for all of it. So these are usually big, broad terms to
big whoppers.
Try and understand a group of people. The way I've understand it, left and right, is basically the right being the side that doesn't want to move, like is comfortable of where we are and wants to make where we are work really well. And then we have the left, which is the side who's like, we can grow, we can do better type of thing. I do think there's a good reason why left and right has evolved into our politics, because I do think it is a balancing line between the two. We can't go, full left and, do everything human cloning and all that. Like, if we really let the floodgates go on that side, things will go a bit out of hand. Kind of the same with the right-hand side as well, where it's more controlling and, like, making sure everyone stays where they are type of thing.
And it's interesting too, because in reality though, the two sides have very little control. Like, we really have a choice. When we think we've got a democracy and we think we have a choice, you choose really between two groups. And one is generally conservative, one is progressive generally. And every few years we swap them over. So, and they tweak and make laws here and there, but
I think that also causes an issue of like very short-term thinking in government leadership, which
it does. It comes to 4 years.
Considering when these governments are meant to last multiple of our generations, ideally.
And this is where you come to the problem with China, because they think in terms of 50, 60 years, 100 years. Because they don't have elections, they're not, their leader is there for life, and they'll be replaced with another one, and their plans aren't bound up in 4-year terms. Which
is like that has its advantages. That's something I don't think will. I feel like that might be a topic for another time.
It probably is.
Yeah. Because we're meant to be talking about ideas.
So we should be moving on to more people's ideologies, I guess. The problem comes for it when people take them to the extreme. So you develop a thought pattern of it.
I don't also think it's just that either. I think this is really clear. America's a really good case study in this of really split sides, but like. The fact that, one side hates the other side, no matter, if you're just on the edge of right, like, you say, oh, I'm centre, but, I have a few right ideologies, or I'm centre, I have a few left ideologies. But, because you're still in that side, you have to go against everything on the other side.
Yeah, there's very few people who sit in the middle, that swing.
Yeah, that, truly in the middle, because usually it's like, I'm... there will be people.
Well, there must be, because elections change.
There are people like that. I do think a lot of them, and I think when Trump got in power in America, a lot of them have realised, oh, this is what the right party is. And I think, and this is something I've thought about before, but because the right party in America's like taken control for so long, and like how I was saying before, how left is like wanting to progress and right is wanting to slow down, because they've been in power for too long, trying to keep everything the same. The left has built up this internal momentum to push it back to where I think it should be at this point in time, if that makes sense.
So go backwards, you mean? Or?
No, go forward. So like, what's happening? This is just a theory crafting, I suppose. Because the right has been in power for so long, when the left finally gets in power, like more progressive things will be changed because they've been staying in power for so long. If they flipped and flopped a little bit more often, if elections were genuinely fair and stuff, I think you'll find, it will be balanced between ideologies to slowly progress, but not to the point where it's too far or not too slow.
I think that does work in Australia to a certain extent, because as soon as your government runs out of ideas or starts to flounder, then you elect a new one, and they in their time this is getting on more politics now.
I think if we're going to talk about ideologies, politics will come into it, especially left and right politics.
Well, it does, because I think, so that what happens in time in opposition, they tend to re-evaluate themselves and develop new ideas and policies and things, and then when they're voted in, they can implement. And they generally are progressive, even the Conservative parties. They do we have, they come in and they stabilise things, and it's always, there's tweaking here and there. They generally, the unions and those things often will get a better deal. But I'm just thinking then of something that bugs me to tears, and that's the lack of investment in the arts from more right-wing politicians. There's, I see a great deal of benefit in artistic. It's not something that can often make a lot.
It's not obvious
money
profit.
Making, and I think art is something that needs to be invested into a society regardless. I think as an ideology,
I think education and
education,
research as well.
Well, all those things. I think education, research, and what was the other one? Health. Yeah, are very important things for your society to run. But you've got to be careful of losing a little bit of your humanity by not allowing people to express themselves and give them the support to do that.
And this comes down to what our society is based on, which is capitalism, which is another form of ideology, of where it's all about the driving of profit, and you put in your time to work 9 to 5, 5 days a week type of thing, enjoy your weekend and then get back into it, try and live the dream, which is a good way for businesses to make money. And this goes back to our video game discussion again, but it does really stifle creativity of humans.
And I think that we've been caught on this roller coaster of the capitalist ideology, this capitalist perspective, where having stuff, and it comes back to a little bit of what we're talking about, happiness. Having stuff is what we need. I need to have the new and the best, and I have to go to work to provide that. And you see, this is enforced on us in advertising as well. So it's the clever range of things that keep getting hammered on TV. Your life's gonna be gonna cook much better, or you're gonna sleep much better if you buy this product. That anchors you into a mindset of whether you buy that product or not. You must
just products in general.
Oh, I'm going to sleep better if I have the best mattress, or that might be true. But it's we get caught up in consumerism.
A question from chat. What do you think the world would be better if it was all left or all right?
I don't think it'd be better. I think there'd be issues with. Well, if we have a look at extremism, so if you go completely right, you end up with fascism, like Nazis.
Yep.
If you go left, you end up with communism, like we had in Russia.
Yeah.
So you're going to have these two extremes. So I don't think
it is about that balance, and I think that's why you need good free election, because it's all about the math of.
I guess even if we imagine it's free too, if we think it's like bread and circuses they talked about. If you believe you have a choice, you're happy.
Yeah, I do think though, like, because the way our politics have been working so far within this capitalist society is, providing that short-term political motivation to stick to, your party type of thing.
Yeah. I think too, going back, I also believe that the problem with capitalism, in fact, that having everything has a value attached to it.
Yeah.
So you've got to have, it's got to be something someone wants to buy, and healthcare is a very difficult one to do because no one wants ill health. And what governments have done in the past, and other governments overseas, is try to make health a commodity. So you're going to make money out of having a knee reconstruction. Beauty. If I have a stroke, I'm stuck in bed for weeks and they can't cure me, they don't make money. So they don't want to deal with people with strokes, they want to deal with young guys with knee injuries. So we made that into a commodity because of a capitalist system. So the ideology of capitalism isn't really good for your health.
Yeah, it goes back to, you don't want a country that's full left, full right. I also don't think you want a country that's full capitalism or full, like...
Well, you can imagine, I guess, so this is why Marxism, the communist ideology came about, because it was fair for everyone. So even though you might be on the top of the tree, you're given what you work in the docks, you that's an important job, it all balances out, and everybody shares in what...
Like, the CEO would be paid as much as the, poor person on the factory floor.
Well, everyone gets shared. There's no poverty. So this is the beauty of the ideology of it.
Beauty.
Everybody is equal and fair and shares in the state, and everything that's produced is evened out. There's no poverty and there's no rich people. But humans aren't wired this way. This is just not how we work. You can't
see that working. Not in these modern times either.
Well, no. We've evolved to survive, and unfortunately, it's
like you do need, and I think it comes down to the fact that you need some inequality.
Interesting, isn't it? So that's an interesting, very interesting point when we talk about happiness or sadness and equality. Like when you think about poverty. And the poverty line goes up. So you look at poverty in Australia, and don't get me wrong, I'm not undermining people who are struggling. Or
yeah.
But it's a lot easier to be poor in Australia than it is to be poor in Africa.
Yeah.
You die. Like, you're not likely to die of starvation in Australia.
Yeah.
You might die of cold because you want a house, but, that's not like...
Yeah.
But it's... So, the different places depending on where you're born.
The thing about Africa though is like, what would their highest people be like?
Oh well, there's people filthy rich from depending on where you look at in Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go Somalia is a place is just terribly stuffed up, and people die of starvation and war and famine and stuff all the time because the governments aren't stable and they can't produce the right stuff. But there are people who are incredibly wealthy who exploit things. They exploit the circumstances, and they. Yeah.
Do you think a government should be able to equalise that a little bit, stop those people starving, and the rich people taking advantage of the system? Because
look, it's a great. Once again, it's a great principle, and I agree that we should be looking after those poorer people in society. We should be able to have a society that protects the vulnerable. So we've got people in society who are, for whatever reason, struggle, And then you got people who, on the other end of because the bizarre thing is, I think 1% of the world's wealth, or what is it? I can't remember the top percentage of the world's wealth is controlled by like 1% of the people. So it's like I can't remember the statistic.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous when you think that there are people who are struggling,
and there's people who can buy countries.
Or a volcano, like those guys in New Zealand. How cool is that?
I didn't hear about that. This is news to me.
No, that's anyway. That's a totally different news subject.
Okay.
There's a volcano that killed 17 Australian people and things a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
And the guys who run the tours and that, two of the brothers actually own the island, own the volcano.
Okay.
So that was my takeaway. I forgot about all the terrible tragedies, and I was just intrigued that they won. They own a volcano. Anyway, yeah. So off subject there, but what was your question? I forgot.
So did I.
Volcanoes do that.
Yeah. A question from chat though. What about North Korea? That's a fascist.
That's certainly a fascist organisation. So that's a classic. So that's
because I know they don't have capitalism there. I've heard that they've tried, but they didn't have the.
No, it's a dictatorship. It's controlled by it's what Russia actually. This is a sort of example. North Korea is a good example of what happens when you don't. I guess when fascist leaders take over a communist type ideal.
Mm.
And so you end up with this very like it's like George Orwell's 1984 or Huxley's Brave New World and
so basically a police state.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very much controlled. I mean, every piece of information is controlled. And
yeah, even the internet, like people.
Yeah.
It's like custom websites that praise the leader and stuff.
Yeah, and it's almost like he's a god. Now, I don't think this, we deserve to have the right to, I reckon, to do this, to talk about right, left,
Well, these type of the discussions are the ones that help propel us. If we don't have those discussions, if we stay quiet in our caves with our hands and ears over our eyes, like we won't.
Yeah, I think it helps. If you can see what your brothers or sisters are doing, if you can see, just give a moment of breath to seeing what people of a different political view are doing, just step out of it for a moment and have a think about it is a great thing, because it doesn't mean you change your mind, but at least have a little bit of empathy and tolerance for people's different views, and I think that's the key. Like
the way I think of it too is like you want to understand more. Like you don't want to block knowledge from.
Well, yeah, you want to have it free. You don't want. The problem too that comes with strong people with strong ideologies is that they're strong and they want to control information in a particular way. And it's not so much about the knowledge, it's then because it gets used weaponized. It's about stopping for a minute and going, okay, how does this?
Because that's kind of what's happening in America, where they are literally trying to control, what knowledge kids can gain access to as a way of manipulating them into their own ideology.
It gets concerning when you start banning literature and books. When you start banning information.
If there's a book burning, you're probably on the wrong side of some sort of history.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which, you feel like it'll be obvious for some of these people, but I think they are so far down the rabbit hole as I'm on the right, and the right is.
It's generational too. It's a bit like going back to indoctrination. You've grown up in this environment, and it's difficult to get out of. And I think you see a lot of people I guess people take comfort in belonging to it. They believe this, and I'm right. Because if you stop for a minute and think and try and think about what the other people or other person are thinking of, you as you said before, you might be somewhat wrong, and that's hard.
Yeah,
and
it's not pleasant.
And then at the moment, if I keep believing this particular ideology, I'm with all my other groups of friends, and we're in an echo chamber, and we can.
And you feel more right because you're surrounded by people who will tell you
exactly
you're
it's
right.
An echo chamber, yeah. You keep getting that feedback where you know.
And that's how extremists are basically born. Get stuck in a really tight.
And I think too, interestingly, and is often a cult of personality where people. I always wonder how people get wrapped into cults or how people get involved in these extreme things. When you look at it and you go, well, you know, there are very intelligent people who get wound up in these sometimes, and you sort of wonder why. But it's maybe, I'm not sure what it. You just get caught, as you said, in that
rabbit hole
thing.
Yeah, you've got the blinders on. And you can't. And like once you're in there, it's almost impossible, isn't it?
Especially because the feedback is you keep getting positive and that.
Even if something does pierce that feedback bubble.
Yeah.
Everything else will be like, no, that's obviously fake news. Like,
that's the other thing, yeah.
Like, denying just reality for self-comfort at the end of the day.
And this is what we were warned about by a lot of past authors and I think it's 1984, Orwell talks about newspeak.
Okay.
I think that's the one where they keep changing the news all the time to manipulate. To every day it's different. Like the headlines change in order to control the people, and somewhat that's what you start to see.
That's what
in reporting.
Yeah, the Republican Party is basically trying to do.
Well, they do.
Not on purpose, but
I think you get. You've got to be this. So if you you look at there's a lot of you look at right-wing publications or news feeds, and you can almost predict what they're going to say about certain subjects or what their view will be on certain subjects, and those are not necessarily news reporting; they're opinion pieces. And I think people get mixed up with the idea of people's opinions, right-wing opinions.
The problem is, though, they have every right to get that confused because these people are purposely putting out their opinions as fact, which is one of these ways they try and manipulate people on the masses by going like, oh, look, suntan your balls will make you more of a man type of thing.
Yeah.
Which, like, if you... I don't even know how you'll come to that conclusion, but like there's people who'll see Tuckerson's reporting on it. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me because I'm in my little
It fuels what your ideology is, your belief, your core belief systems, and it's hard to stop and examine that. Like it's hard to stop and examine what it is your core,
especially because like. Basically, the input for the basically the hatred of the left from the right is like Fox News, Newsmax, and those other right-wing publications purposely filling this bubble with news that they want to be real.
But you think when that's come about because there was so much push from those of the left wing in politics, there's so much support for it that they, as a conservative group, their ideas had nowhere to go. So that's why they were born to try and balance out that information. Problem is that they're currently the modern a lot of modern news groups are driven by, say, Murdoch, who has he's one man who has an opinion, an idea. And then his news organisation starts to follow that opinion idea, and I don't know if that's healthy.
I also don't think it's healthy to monetize news as a way where they like some news stations purposely. For example, CNN did a town hall with Donald Trump because they're trying to be fair and balanced and sit in the middle, so they just allow him to. Manipulate their viewership in order to say, see, look, we can, basically they're trying to do it for profit by getting everyone to watch
Yeah.
their channel, which and this is a bit of a weird situation where I think America finds himself in, where like, so you have the right side, you have middle right, which are like normal Christian type people, and like, you know, they're
So you
not,
have centralists, what they call centralists, centre left, centre
yeah,
right.
well, center right, but then you have what I feel like is more of what the right is, or at least the loudest part of it, where they're a lot more extreme, where it's like, you know, trans people is grooming kids type of thing,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like all this stuff, which is more or less about controlling the public into what they think the world should be. Like, people should be
Yeah.
praying for God in our schools and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and you know, gay conversion camps should be a thing,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
we know
it's-
isn't.
It's a true. That's where you allow your ideologies to become political, and
Yeah.
they do blur into one. But the extremeness of that is.
And I feel like I feel like it's separated enough that the middle of what left and right is changing a little bit, at least in that.
Well, there's there should be a separation of church and state. Like, this was something that's always been I don't know if it's in our constitution or not, but it certainly is driven that way. Like, that
Yeah.
they try and do the best for the people. That's the thing is that they try to do. I honestly believe that most people get into politics. I think not all, but a lot get in for the true reason. They're true believers. They want to do better. They want to represent people. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, the machinery and
The way
absorbing
politics has been basically set up, it
Choose your-
forces you into a way of
box, yeah.
manipulating public on masses to like vote for me over my opponent.
Yeah,
type thing.
yeah, and I don't know where it's going to head in. Like, it's truly dangerous. I think if Trump does get in, because he's got quite vindictive, and he's quite, you know, as a president of one of the most powerful nations in the world, is not nice to have a man-child in charge of it. So that's me being emotive about it.
Yeah,
but I do think it's dangerous.
I also think it's dangerous. I think when Trump first got in, people are like, oh, he would never win. Or you'll have people like, oh yeah, Trump makes sense. He's like, you know, not a career politician, and we're sick of those because they're bad for our country.
I honestly thought he might. I hope that he would have grown up, matured a bit, and
What? He's 70? I think he's a lost cause at this point, to be honest. I think if he starts maturing at this age...
Yeah, no, I don't think it's going to happen. But anyway, yeah, we just got to wait and...
Like, I do think there's enough... and, like, this is going back to what I was saying before, because the right is not whole, as it were. It's not the entire side. I feel like the entire side of the left, for the most part, there are going to be outliers here and there for whatever reason, are on the same page of, you know, let's support people.
Well, so the left side has issues, especially with environmental issues, and there's often people involved in. The world still has to run. We still have to have. Look, I know we need to phase out of fossil fuels, but I think the left wing view of just stopping everything is just going to be.
It's not practical,
No,
but like
it's
it
dangerous.
comes down to like these people on these sides aren't politicians. They don't run countries. They they go buy their groceries and come home, and if they feel like everything's hopeless enough that they have to protest, they will do that. Left or right side will do it.
Yeah.
But I do think they are there to convince the politicians that, hey, this group of people want this thing. If you want votes, go for that group of people.
Yeah, we've seen that recently with the teal movement. With that.
Yes.
It's an interesting
So we might need to describe what the Teal movement is for people. Did you want to do that?
So it's a group of independents that
So-
they're called Teal because of the colour they put them on the electoral system.
I'm not sure how many Americans we have for us. For the Americans,
Yeah, so
we don't have a two-party system technically.
we do. It's called
We do, but like there are.
We
other
don't have
options.
presidents.
Yeah.
We don't have a president. We have a party leadership. So we don't have a presidential leadership. So in
Yeah.
America, you've got states, and they all represent themselves, and then you've got a presidential system. We have a federal government, which is like a two-party government.
Yeah,
And then we have state governments that run things. So the federal government run federal agencies, state government run state agencies, and we have premiers of states, and we have president. We don't have a president. We have a prime minister. So he's not elected. The prime minister is just a leader of the party. It's the party that runs the things.
And you can elect the leader of your party
If you're in the party.
If you're in the party. But essentially, when Australians vote, we vote for the party we want to have our votes. And if they don't get it, our vote will generally be passed down if we do our voting properly.
Yeah.
And this is probably Teals probably was voted first, to be honest, because
I think a lot of people put Teals. So Teals are independent, so they're not aligned with either
Labor or Liberal, which are our two
main
parties
system.
system.
Yeah. We've got other minor players that preferences are given to, but they're the two, and the Teals are outside that. So they control often a balance of power. So what you end up with is the government being whoever wins power or has the majority has the right to negotiate with the independent people.
Yeah.
It gives them a lot of power. It gives them a lot of power in their electorates.
Yeah, and it gives people who who have good ideas for the country a chance to be able to influence.
Yeah, it gives you an opportunity for a smaller group of people to input. So it can be very good. It can be pretty poor too.
Well, yeah.
With
Dumbasses
in, but
To be fair though, look at the issue in America where there's a lot of dumbasses in position of power because it's one of two choices.
Yeah, and
it's all about motivating their voter base to vote.
Well, they don't have to vote in America. We're one of the few countries where it's compulsory, which I think makes a difference. But dumbasses everywhere. You can't get away from it.
Yeah, you can't get away from it. I do think Australia, the problem with America is they don't have that much influence with how their government works. It will take a handful of voting cycles because I from my understanding, a lot of the Republicans are purposely trying to manipulate positions to stay in power type of thing because I think they think the left would do that anyway, but I think that's more just mirroring what they would do.
We've done that. This is sort of moving off ideology, but there's certainly gerrymandering. There's that's happened in Australia as well, where they've manipulated borders and voting lines. Sorry, hang on.
Phone call?
Mum's on her way home. Just give me one moment.
Did you need to answer it?
I'll just quickly say hi.
Oop.
No, it's okay. We're good.
Just probably.
She's on her way home.
Yeah, to let you know.
Anyway, yeah. So I guess the takeaway point for me, for what I think about it, is if you have beliefs or you have strong ideas, just take a minute to go. Not discredit them, but to have a quick try and step into the other side.
Yeah, be allowed, be the devil's advocate, I think is a good way of going about it. Yeah. If someone comes in your echo chamber, is like, hey, I think this, and you agree with this, try playing against it anyway, because I think that helps develop the skills to have the chance to learn more and
Yeah,
that
looking on the
understanding.
other side. I mean, you don't want to get into, because sometimes you end up with a heated discussion, which can be pointless.
Yeah,
You want to try and understand.
you want to understand why they think the way they do.
And you may gain something from that. You may end up not. You may end up staying with what you want, but
Well,
you might end up having
Either
a bit of
way,
insight.
I think you'll gather more. Like you'll be better for it. Even if you disagree what they've told you, you'll have a better idea what
Yeah.
the other side thinks.
And I think you'll be kinder. I think it's a kinder thing to do.
Yeah, I've had discussions with Trumpists before, and they are like, "Why are you using Google?" It's like like they are very, you're like so the Trumpers basically was to me like you're not doing good enough research. The reason why you believe what you believe in is because you're stuck in an echo chamber.
That's right. Yeah.
Which, like, that's why I was reaching out to him to get other inputs, but it's like, no, I just can't talk to you, and that's a key sign. If you can't talk to someone who you disagree with on ideology, especially, there's something missing there.
If you're going, well, yeah, I can't talk to you. That's you're an idiot. I'm not.
Yeah. You disagree with all the points I think are very valid.
You're going to have to. I think you should reflect on yourself for a moment. Again, easy to say.
Oh yeah, it is easy to say.
But
it is
difficult
something
because sometimes when you're in it, it's sort of you don't realise.
Because it is like even now, I think about situations where I'm like, oh shit, I did that wrong, and I can feel my internal self. Don't admit that. Don't say that out loud.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you know what? I will say it.
Yeah.
It's not easy,
but it's really good to be able to go, oh, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
That was wrong. I made a mistake and not change course. But other people, the other funny thing I found when I've done that is people go,
oh, but you changed your mind. It means
you changed your mind. You were wrong. You've changed your mind.
And if you're wrong about that, you're probably wrong about a lot of things.
I changed my mind because I had better information around and I changed my mind.
But it comes down to the thing that, if you admit that you're wrong, you're weak, which is what?
Which I think you're probably a lot stronger if you can do it.
Well, yeah, but the strong men don't. Like, what's that strong man ideology? I guess that's just fascism.
What do you mean, like?
Trump won't admit that he's.
Oh, it's just it's an illusion of being strong, boy.
But people agree with him.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it is an illusion that strength comes from standing up or believing you're right. I think it's actually detrimental.
Yeah.
Especially in the modern world. Yeah.
Which I think some ideologies kind of put too much emphasis on, like, you have to be the right one.
Yeah, and we do it ourselves. We put ourselves into that, and society pushes it into, again, coming back to advertising and capitalist society, tells you that,
the world wants you to be one way.
Yeah, this is correct.
It's not easy to go no to it.
And to turn around and go, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add? Does chat have any questions while we're here as well? Hello Tank, hello Flask.
Felt I was rambling a bit there, dodging around bits and pieces.
Well, I kind of knew ideology would be a little bit all over the place.
I think we only touched on the essence of it, but yeah.
I think that's all we really can do at this point. Yeah. We'll need to have a more narrow topic next time, I think.
Yeah. If anyone has any ideas of things we can chew the fat over.
Yeah. Any questions, any topic ideas, if you want us to clarify something we've said. I think how many of these have we done now?
Don't know, 5? 4?
Something, a handful of them at this point, yeah. So if there's something else you want us to cover again, I have a question. Mostly Dad's skincare routine.
My skincare routine?
Apparently so.
Yeah, it's sometimes if it's raining, I don't have a hat and I get wet. And that sort of washes down a little bit. And then in the shower, I might go.
Yeah, I'm basically. I think everyone's making fun of the fact that you have more hair than I.
Up here.
Yeah. Who does mostly Dad's hair?
I'd rather it all fall out. It drives me nuts. You've got to keep cutting the bloody thing.
Oh, actually, yeah.
It's like lawn.
Bit of pain in the arse.
Anyway.
Yeah. hate mowing lawns as well.
Yeah.
A little off topic, but maybe that could be our next time. Chores we don't like. You know, just dumb it down, talk about ideologies and politics
and then go to
and
chores you don't like. I don't. Yeah, like
not a fan of vacuuming, to be honest.
I'm not a keen. I don't like unpacking the dishwasher for some reason.
I don't mind mopping.
Mum hates it. I don't mind mopping.
I don't mind mopping.
Mopping.
I'm used to mopping at when I was working at Macca's. I'm used to doing it with a big.
I
wet
like
mop
washing
and
the
stuff,
car.
but-
It's not.
I'm not too keen on washing. I'm
Yeah.
not much of a carpet.
I don't know. Anyway.
So that's our little topics we don't like segment. Thank you everyone for stopping by.
Awesome.
Awesome.